Hello and welcome back. This video is about getting started with the Tower Actions user interface. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Thank you for helping me help others. The first thing we're going to do is something I probably should have done a few videos ago. But you have the mouse cursor when you hover over these things, all good. But if you actually click and play the game, you can't see the mouse cursor. So let's correct that. So in our BP player, under Begin Play, we're going to get the player controller and use that to show mouse cursor. And in some cases that would be enough. If I go back, or if I just hit play here, click on it, all good. I believe that's because the set input mode game in UI is already enabled, but just to be sure, we want to set that as well. That also requires the player controller. And for this, we can leave the rest default. So with that done, I'm going to create a new UI folder. I'm going to create a new widget, just under User Interface, Widget Blueprint. It is a user widget, as it is 99% of the time. We'll call this WBP Tower Actions. So for now, this will be a very simple UI. We have our panel, canvas panel. We're going to throw in a button. Let's make this button anchored to the center. I'm going to hold Shift and Control. Bam. I'm going to make this 100 by 100. And the initial one is just going to have a position of 0, negative 120. I'm going to hit Control D on this 3 times. This one can go at negative 120, 0, 120, 0, and lastly, 0, 120. All of these need to be variable, which gives them some fun names. We'll just rename this to button action top, button action left, button action right, and button action bottom. The way that we're going to display this is in a blueprint. So we're going to make a new actor blueprint. We'll call this BP, Tower Actions. And the purpose of this blueprint is just to show the widget. So we just add a widget component, not a widget interaction. The name is fine. We click on that. We pick our widget class here. So there's a few things in here about how this works. I'll go over a little bit of it. First of all, you have the space is world or screen. We're going to use screen, but world, or in both cases, because this is a blueprint, we're just throwing up in the world. That's going to set the positioning. The world will actually be in the world. If you were playing a first-person or third-person game, you might have that UI for, a door control or anything like that. For this, we're going to use screen because it's consistent and it's a little less problematic. If you were to use world in some game, and you're using the mouse cursor, you probably want to have receive hardware input. You can see the big block of text here actually. If you were doing world and you had a camera that moves around, you would probably want to use the widget interaction on the player in that case. And then you'd have to finagle the control and the movement of the pointer. But this should be good with what we're going for. So in our towers, we have our BP tower base. So currently you can see that the parent class is actor. We're going to change that. So we're going to go up into our class settings. We have our parent class here. we're actually going to switch this to our TD tower pawn. So this will do a few things. Pawn is a type of actor, so it's within that parent or super child relationship, so the conversion is fine. But as we saw in the constructor for the tower pawn, we are creating a static mesh component, which we're naming static mesh, and we're setting that to the root component. We're also, of course, adding our ability system component and attribute set. So what that means is when we switch this here, over on the left, you now see that the root component has become that static mesh. These are still how they were. The ability system component is added, and it all looks good. So the first thing we can do with that done is we'll go in and test it. We hover over these. It all looks like it's working fine. So we can now set our tower mesh to the appropriate tower, which is tower-square-build-c. So if we throw that in, hit compile, we go in and play, we see a few things. First of all, doesn't seem to be doing anything. One thing of note, I forgot to move the dirt tiles back into that folder, so I'll do that in a sec. But if we close those folders, you look over here, there's no towers. So the reason that is, and actually I'll move the dirt first. There we go. Back in our tower manager, when we're creating our towers, so the collision handling override here is default, which means it checks for collisions, and if it's colliding with something, it just doesn't spawn the actor. So two ways we can get around that. First of all, we could just set this to always spawn. However, the collision of the tower doesn't actually mean anything in this game. So instead, we'll go into our static mesh, look for collision, and we'll just set the preset to no collision. With that set, you can see it now spawned all the tower models. You can still hover over and see the highlight. So with that done in our tower base, we're going to add two new functions. Select and unselect. So when a tower becomes selected, which we'll do in a future video, the first thing it's going to do is spawn an actor. That actor will be our recently created Tower Actions. I'll split this out as usual. And that location is going to be our actor location. Moved up vertically 100. I'm also going to pop this open and set the owner here to self. And lastly, I'm going to promote this to a variable. We'll just call this BP Tower Actions. So that in our unselect, the first thing we're going to do is control drag out this. We want to get our BP Tower Actions and destroy it. So naturally, we're going to want to convert that to a validated get. And lastly, also just make sure this variable is now null. So while we're not going to do the selection in this video, I can at least go into begin play on our tower base and just call select. This will just happen on every tower, so it's going to look a little weird, but at least you can see it. There you go. Each tower has its 4 buttons spawned around it. You can see the positioning all works fairly well. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel, watch these videos 2 weeks early, or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.